So I am brand new to this app on the Oculus Quest 2. It's called Tavern Tales. It's basically a RPG creation, and it's an engine that lets you play tabletop games. So it's got some neat features, and we're going to check it out. So you start out in this little area outside of a castle. You can create sort of a nameplate for yourself, and you can play, in this game, you can play as a dungeon master, a DM, or you can play as a player. Now, keep in mind that the dungeon master needs to have a VR headset. That is required. However, there is a PC edition for people who just want to play the game. So if your DM has a VR headset, then the rest of you can play on PC. And so far, it's currently in open beta and free on PC. I will include a link down below the video. You can change your avatar. There's a lot of cool customizable stuff. As you can see, there's a bunch of stuff. I've already set up a character. We'll go ahead and move on from this shortly here. But you can basically create your character to look however you want. You can make an orc, you can make an elf, you can make it look like yourself, you can make it look completely fantasy. There's a lot of neat customizability already built into the avatars, and all of these move around in the VR space with you if you're playing VR. If you're on PC, it's basically just, your little player character. So moving on from avatars, you've got, you can set up games that you DM as the dungeon master versus games you play. And then if you want to enter the tavern, that's where most of the stuff happens. Obviously, you can see the environment here. It's very nice. It's got some ambiance and everything, but nothing else really going on here. This is basically where you set up your character. So we're going to go ahead and explore the tavern. That's where the real magic happens. It takes a moment to load in here. Keep in mind, this is an open beta. There are going to be plenty of bugs. Go ahead and, if you download this yourself, feel free to sign up to report bugs and make this run better. I will say, one of the main issues I've had with this game so far has been frame rates. It stutters on occasion, at least on VR. I'm loading this through SideQuest. It stutters on occasion, however, all in all, it runs pretty smoothly. A lot of the objects in the tavern actually are interactable. You can pick things up, move them around, throw them, all sorts of cool stuff, as you can see. But otherwise, there's basically no functionality to that. This right here, this is the table where all the magic happens in the game. You as the DM, if you're playing as a DM, you can create your own customizable maps and settings and fill them with characters, and your players can play on them and see in real time. It's basically taking the cost out of having to build your own models and whatnot, and putting it into a virtual environment. Some people have already done this with Tabletop Simulator. This is not the first thing to do this. However, this is a standalone app that is basically made for tabletop RPGs. It's pretty neat here. Obviously, things are still a little buggy, but you can move your little characters around. So if you have monsters or player characters, you can move them around on the map in real time, and your players standing around the table or sitting around the table can see what you're doing. We're going to move behind here, and they've got a DM screen, a virtual one, that your players can't really see around when they come in. So first of all, right here, supposedly, is a log of all your players' dice rolls. You can keep track of initiative here with which players go in what order. I think on the far right there's a little monster flag as well. And I'm sure you can introduce more. You can pretty much clone whatever you want in this game. You got little characters there up on the wall as well. It's pretty cool what you can do with maps. You could build maps through the whole room. Obviously, this right here is neat. You can also hide the tavern if it's too distracting for your players. Just go ahead and make it a dark room. But I think having the tavern on, it's a nice ambiance. It's pretty cool. Right here, you can open up a browser in-game. Obviously, if you're in VR, this is very important. You don't want to have to keep tabbing out to look at your phone or a laptop. You want that VR headset on at all times. You don't want to be breaking the immersion and having your players have to wait for you while you tab out and look at something. So having a browser is pretty cool. Here you can look at DM notes that you can set up online. Now keep in mind, if you go to taverntales.com, I believe it is, you can set up these notes beforehand. You don't have to be typing these things up in VR. If you log in with your account, you can make notes. You can create player handouts like you see here to give to your players so they can read about lore or whatever, and then you can have your DM notes on your side of the DM screen that they cannot see. Here you've got a neat little dice tower. You throw the dice in, and voila, it shows what it rolled at the bottom. It's very neat. It's all very random. So far, I rolled some dice earlier, and it seems to be perfectly random. No real weight one way or another. So pretty cool. I believe your players can also load dice towers of their own. However, I haven't logged in as a player yet, so I have to confirm that. Now this is where really neat stuff comes in. You can load DM scenery and creatures and such. So right here we're on the creatures tab, and you can see from A to Z, it's got a ton of the creatures from your standard D&D monster manual. I believe there might be some from Pathfinder as well in here. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. So far it seems like they're mostly focusing on Dungeons and Dragons at this point. But right here, you can put a Cyclops in the water. You can do all sorts of stuff. I'm seeing all sorts of different sizes of player models. Now you can scale these up and down by holding the object in both hands and kind of clicking and dragging, as it were, pulling the object to scale or whatever. So if you want a very large dragon, you can absolutely make that happen. But as it is, it scales it appropriately to what it is normally in D&D. So all of these are going to be like medium-sized creatures. These could be player characters right here. If your players found one that looked close to what they see their character looking like in their description, then that would be pretty neat to load in. So we're going to go ahead and, as you can see, there's a ton of creatures here. They've really put a lot of work into this already. Like I said, it's just coming into open beta right now. There was a closed beta before this. I was unfortunately not able to get into that. But now that it's in open beta, they're going to have a ton of people testing and playing this. You join the Discord for more updates as well, for sure. Now we're going to move on to scenery. This is where you as the DM would hopefully before the session go ahead and set up whatever little scene you want. So like the scene that's already pre-made here on the tabletop, you can create stuff right in front and save these. Behind your DM screen, there's a way to save multiple maps, have different slots, so that before your session starts, if you think your players might go to a couple different scenes, a couple different areas on the map, you can load them in. And there are some neat tools you can have with the map to work that I'll show you later. But right now we're just looking at the scenery, which is very neat. They put a lot of work into this. I think some of these might be modeled after real models in real life, 3D models. They all seem pretty intuitive to put together, but everything just snaps exactly where you put it. So if you want things to, say, clip into the wall, you can do it. They don't have to sit naturally on top of each other. The only thing that really does that are the little monsters and creatures that you put. Those have physics, as it were, and they sit and fall and whatever. Might tumble off the map if you make it too uneven. As you can see, there's a ton of scenery to choose from. Look at all this town stuff they have. Some really detailed models here. It's all very neat. Very cool stuff that they've got all lined up and ready for you to use as soon as you load into the game. Got all sorts of things. You could put a lot of work into this, making a town, or you can quickly, in 5 minutes, just throw together a couple houses, a little lake, whatever you really want. Easy peasy. And your players could play on that, and they could see where their characters are. And I could see maps like this proving especially helpful for combat situations. You might not want to create a map for everywhere that you go, but if you get the feeling that your players are going to be encountering a bunch of large mobs or such, building a map for them would be super helpful in-game. Obviously, as you can see, they've got different themes. I have heard from the devs on Discord and Reddit, they've expressed their interest in not only just doing classic 5e and Pathfinder sort of themes, but they also want to bring cyberpunk and a couple other themes eventually to the app. That is their plan. There's nothing currently like that in the game. However, it's mostly high fantasy. However, they do plan on eventually bringing some other themes to the game that you could sort through and bring into your game. So if you don't, say, have a traditional Dungeons and Dragons high fantasy sort of setting, instead you have some sort of futuristic, or I think that they said even an army theme. I might be mistaken on that. They're planning on bringing different themes is a major point. As you can see here, you can also load in a bunch of props, and these would just really help bring your town alive. You can see the barrels, they've got plants, there's little flags and banners that you can post up anywhere in your world and really help those, which are essentially cookie-cutter houses and city buildings that you have, really come to life. Like I said before, you are able to scale these objects. You can make them larger, smaller. Whoops, I grabbed that there. Let me put that back. You can scale them larger and smaller by grabbing the object, I think in your left hand, and then moving with your right hand, dragging with the grip trigger. So you can make any of these objects that you see here in front of you, whatever size you need them to be in your world. If you want a really large, imposing tower, go ahead and grab one of those, scale it up huge. Everything honestly just kind of works. I'm very impressed with how easy it is to easily throw together a little map for your players to interact with and visually see that interaction with. It's all very cool. As you can see, we got more props here. At this point, I'm just messing around. There's no real rhyme or reason to what I'm throwing together, but I'm just trying to show how all these things can kind of interact together. You've got piles of gold and chests, so you can have that treasure room at the end. And in a bit here, I will show you how the Fog of War works. As a DM, having the fog, your players not be able to see certain things right away without them first moving up and gaining visibility of it is very important. And they've implemented a Fog of War tool in this game. So you could have a treasure room at the end of that long dungeon, and they would have to crawl all the way through the dungeon with you, revealing these little Fog of War bricks and pulling them off one by one. You are able to see through the Fog of War as the DM, however the players are not. It's just a black shroud over it, which I think is a very cool implementation of what is a very important feature on both Roll20 and all the other online role-playing things, as well as in real life, putting a sheet of paper or something over your little hexagonal map or whatever you have. Pretty important. Again, lots and lots of props to choose from, all very neat stuff. We're going to move on, though. I think this is the last of the DM stuff, and these are mostly like your tiles. If you're wanting to create, say, a dungeon or the inside of a building or any number of things, these would be sort of interior things that you could scale, more or less. Oops, I think that's a little buggy there. Some of these, almost everything just works. However, I have encountered a couple objects through my testing that kind of tweak out a little bit and need a little bit of proper scaling. This is all very cool stuff. If you were to fill out the inside of a building or something, this is the sort of thing you would be using. There's panels, you've got bricks, you've got floor tiles, all that sort of stuff, and all of it's to scale with the grid that you can implement in the game as well. So the next thing I'm going to show you is the lighting. Now, when you're in the tavern, you can change the lighting slightly. This isn't honestly too big of a feature for me. It could be cool for if you're in combat and you want to throw on like a red light or something. It can give a little bit of a theme, but honestly, all it's doing is changing the lighting slightly, and the floor kind of changes colors because of that. It's not too big of a deal to me at this point. Maybe if they introduce a little bit more full and balanced lighting, that might be something, but given that it's running on the Quest 2, which is essentially just a powerful phone processor, I don't see the lighting getting much stronger than that. Thankfully, lighting isn't too important in here. You've got all you need. As you can see here, you can also scale the grid. That's another thing. And here's that Fog of War I was telling you about. You can just grab this as the DM, toggle that, and you can place Fog of War wherever. Now you can see as the DM, you can see through these blocks. And move them as you want, but your players, if they log into the game as a player, are not going to be able to see through this. They're just going to have complete fog. And you can change the size of the Fog of War as well. As you can see, I'm trying to click and drag it here. It's a little weird, but yeah, like that. So if you wanted to place a much larger Fog of War and not just have a bunch of small pieces, you could just put that there and your players would not see anything that is under that black square is the idea. Another cool thing they've got here is ambience and music tracks. Now, I'm just going to scroll through these, give you a couple seconds to hear each of them. Nothing too intense. That's a dungeon one. There's one for Harbor. This one's fairly noisy. You've got an inn. That would be a good one to play as your players come into the tavern. Got one for sailing. It's got nice ocean noises. City with lots of talking. There's a forest if your players are walking through that. And you've got volume controls. You can stop this at any time you want. There's also Hell, which I guess if you're getting into that demonic landscape with those towers of lava we saw earlier would be good for that. We've also got a prison one. Kind of eerie noise, just in the background. You might want to keep these ambience down rather quiet. And lastly, there's an underwater one. You might want to keep these kind of quiet, given that I believe there is voice chat in the game, and you definitely want your players to be able to hear. You just want this in the background. They've also got some cool music you can play. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like you can have music and ambiance over the top of each other, but the music is bright enough, as you can see, that it kind of fills whatever noise you might need. So if you'd prefer to play music rather than ambiance, this can be a nice way to do it. As far as I understand, all this music is royalty-free. However, you might want to check on that, especially if you're going to stream this somehow on, say, Twitch. You might get taken down if you're streaming any non-royalty-free music. Like I said, there's that little flag. You got a couple other tracks here you can listen to. Wonder, there's Adventure. That one's kind of nice, it's peaceful. And you got Gentle here. It's just kind of, your very generic little thing. You can also toggle the DM screen off and on. If for some reason you did want your players to see your rolls, you could absolutely do that. And here are those save slots I was telling you about as well. You can see those there. So if you have multiple maps, you can load those in too. And lastly, we've got tension, which kind of comes in here with some drums and such. It'd be good for if you're starting a battle or something like that. All in all, I'm quite happy with the music they've got for the game. Nothing too intense or anything like that, but it would definitely suit, say, your high fantasy generic D&D game. I've also got snapping here. I am actually not sure what this tool does. I was looking at it earlier. It kind of seems bugged where it's here, but basically it's for whether or not your things actually are on scale, best I can tell. You can also delete objects as the DM anytime, just pressing the Y button on your left controller on the Quest 2 while holding it. Anyway, that is so far what I've run across in Tavern Tables Open Beta. Keep in mind, this is very much a work in progress. I am not in any way affiliated with these guys. I just think it's a very neat project. I saw it blow up on Reddit today. I thought I'd finally check it out. Lots of neat stuff you can do here. As I would be excited as a DM to create just a basic map and run through this with my players. Obviously, as the DM, you will need a VR headset in order to run this. And I did ask the developers, and they said they are not planning on changing that, i.e. a PC person cannot be the DM. So if you are wanting to be the Dungeon Master in this, in Tavern Tables, one of you needs to have a VR headset. However, the rest of you can play for PC, and as it stands right now, it is completely free to try in the open beta, link down below, in the open beta for both players and DMs, on PC and on the Quest 2. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Very short overview. If you've got any questions, leave them below, or feel free to visit the Tavern Tales Discord. Thanks. Bye.